Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn more at uber.com/flexibilityworks.
CHEK Podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Political Capital, your source for all the latest in BC politics. I am your host, Rob Shaw, coming to you as always from the CHEK News World Headquarters in Victoria. Today, BC taking on tech giants and trucking companies while offering a helping hand to the wine and forestry sectors. Just some of the topics we will be talking about this week. To break it all down, we'll bring in the panel, Jeff Ferrier from Frame Point Public Affairs, Ali Blades from MASH Strategies, and joining us again, Carly Pocinik from Hill & Knowlton. Thank you all for being here. We are going to tap your brains about various subjects this week, starting with BC's new offer to the, well, actually, you know what? I'm not talking about the city of Surrey. I've had it with the Surrey policing dispute, and I don't want to talk about it. We're killing that subject. BC made an offer. They don't want to talk about the offer. They want to run away from the offer. The Premier says it's not $110 million. Kind of sounds like it is $110 million. Your guess is as good as mine what the heck is going on there. We'll have to talk about it when and if there's a deal or not a deal, but we're not doing it this week. We're going to move on to something that actually happened, which is BC introducing legislation to let it sue companies for harming public health, something the Premier foreshadowed back in January after a 12-year-old boy in Prince George took his own life after falling victim to online sextortion. So the bill that landed this week, if it's passed, would let BC sue a company like Meta for their lack of safety provisions, or TikTok for algorithms that push harmful content and are addictive. It's unique in Canada. Lots of questions about how a small province goes up against a large trillion-dollar multinational company. But let's just go around. How do we view what BC is doing here, Carly? Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'll caveat. I'll preface this by saying I don't have kids, and so I know that for parents, this topic is emotional. We see young people every day head down scrolling. It's really tough. It's tough. It's tough in schools. It's tough on parents, and it's especially tough on kids and young people. And so I understand that. In terms of the approach from the government, I'm looking forward to seeing how this is actually going to materialize. But what I'm really curious about is where the accountability and the responsibility lies with the people who are creating this harmful content, right? Like, it's the content creators that are the root of the issue here for bottom lining it. So, what I think would be good to see and good to hear is what happens to the people who are creating this content and who are sending these messages. I understand that the platform is the medium, but the message has to come from somewhere. And so where's the accountability on the people that are creating those messages and with the intent to harm? And that's, I think, the biggest issue here is they're not doing this because they truly believe in the content they're creating. They're creating it with the intent to harm people. So I'd be curious on that aspect of this legislation as well.
Yeah, it seems hard for the province to not only go after the companies, but zero in on the content creators who are pushing a diet fad that is actually harmful for you or that kind of thing, because we're not even sure that the province can go after the company itself, but the Premier insisting that he thinks they can, basing it on going after tobacco companies and pharma company Purdue, which makes OxyContin. Ali, what do you think of this effort from BC?
Well, I think it's a big moment for Minister Nikki Sharma. I've heard her speak on the issue, and I would highly recommend getting an audience or listening to her on this issue. So it's big for her, and I think she's going to navigate this quite well. Now, where did the other parties kind of fit into this? The opposition said it was performative. I call BS on that, just basically saying that opposing it just for the sake of opposing it is harmful in the discussion, really. The Green leader then said, well, let's see if we can extend this to anti-oil and gas messaging as well. So I thought that was, very on brand for the Greens. listen, this is going to be something that like we've never done this before. It's brand new. It's not going to be perfect. The rollout of it's not going to be perfect, but at least they're trying on an issue that could make a huge impact. Even if it's not successful, let's say it's just like it's a rabbit hole of taxpayer dollars going into these legal battles where maybe someone else should be taking them on. Even still, the fact that we're doing it and creating a space for it, I think is going to go a long way. And hopefully other jurisdictions can then do it as well. And maybe we're kind of game changers. So this could be great for Nikki Sharma, and it could be great for BC.
Yeah, it's, I mean, we're one of the leading provinces now with this legislation, but in the US, there's lots of states already suing Meta, class action lawsuits, that type of thing. So the experts I were talking to were saying on its own, can BC change and, bring to heel or put in safety provisions, make a company do something? Probably not. But if it joins a larger movement and kind of stands with them, maybe they can. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, it's like the making the snowman, and you start with a little snowball and you make it bigger and bigger the more you push. And you've got 41 U.S. states now, along with British Columbia, that are pushing action on the Metas and the Facebooks of the world. For this government, it's bread and butter, on your side politics, right? It's we're going to stand with parents and kids against the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Metas of the world who are profiting enormously and doing things like having their company engineers build algorithms that they know promote social media addiction among young people, despite knowing this puts kids at much higher risk of anxiety, depression, eating disorders, and suicide. And we know this because of whistleblowers within Facebook. And I think the government is doing this because it's something that touches everyone day to day. You don't have to look much further than an intersection of a street where these things are so addictive and it's so pervasive that people are crossing the street with moving traffic and they're looking at their phones instead of around them. And it's happening. You've got this, just Mark Zuckerberg, sorry to pick on you, fella, but your net worth is $178 billion. Your company's got a market cap of $1.25 trillion. You're doing this on the backs of young people without much regard for their health. It's time to pay the piper. And that's what the Premier's doing. It's what a bunch of U.S. states are doing. And I think it's what we should be doing. As
long as it doesn't disrupt my ability to get cat videos, I'm okay with the province doing this. The algorithm works great when it's stuff you like. The algorithm is so powerful and complex that youth they're not even knowing that they're being manipulated into getting more and more harmful content, body image content, dieting content, all sorts of things that they are completely unaware of. But cat videos.
I just wanted to add one more quick thing, Rob, on that. And to Ali's point, I did actually hear Nikki Sharma on the Simi Sarah show this morning. And she spoke about the inclusion of online literacy education for kids now, which is, I think, much more fair enough. Like, do what you need to do. But I think starting at the root which is that education piece. So kids do know. We teach research. We teach research in elementary, junior high, university. I think understanding how social media works and understanding what an algorithm is. An 11-year-old doesn't know what that is. Why not teach them? So I think that education piece is really important. And I think much more foundational in the long run than anything else. So I just wanted to add that piece in.
Let's move on to another subject. After a spate of commercial trucks hitting BC overpasses, causing millions in damages, the province has brought in new fees, raising the fine from $500 to $100,000, with the potential threat of even jail time on this issue. The government's been in a bit of a jam because it did go after one Lower Mainland trucking company, only to discover there's a national loophole that they can bring in trucks from another province that are licensed and do the work here without consequence. So there's public frustration, pressure on the government to do something. It has not closed that loophole. That's a federal thing. But Jeff, is this enough? Is this performative, raising fines that companies may never pay? when they can go around it, or what do you think?
Well, it's good populist politics for sure. Again, in the last segment, we talked about going up against a big corporate goof like Facebook. Well, here's the government going up against another big corporate goof. Did I say goof? Goof. Goof is the word.
Right.
Who think they're above the law. Irresponsible trucking companies. The majority are responsible, follow the rules, respect the road, respect other people. But there's this small subset that just can't take the time to measure how tall their trucks are before driving at high speed under underpasses and boosting the fines from $500 up to $100,000, introducing the threat of jail time up to 18 months in the slammer. That's going to make them think twice, I hope. So if you're playing by the rules, if you're measuring your height before you hit the road, Bob's your uncle, you're in good shape. But if you're acting recklessly and putting our roads and people at risk, the government's going to come after you like Charles Bronson in Death Wish. And you better prepare to face the consequences. And there's my 1970s reference that people have been waiting for about a month.
Check that box off.
You got the fresh license, so that's my Charles Bronson.
Carly, you do hear from the trucking sector, or from employees anyways, that there's lots of pressure, there's lots of obligations, there's lots of just get out there and do it, and people who are kind of vulnerable to their employer kind of thing. Does a fine of this magnitude maybe even change the behavior of the companies and the folks that aren't driving the trucks to try and solve that issue?
Money talks, really. I think that, and here's my obscure movie reference. I think safety with gigantic trucks on the road. I mean, anyone that's seen Final Destination, when you're driving behind a logging truck, you're hoping that the regulations and the laws that are in place to keep you safe are on your side at that moment. So I think
you're making me feel old, because that movie's like 25 years old or something now.
Well, I wanted to bring it up to the 90s to compare. Jeff and I always do. So, whatever it takes to keep people safe and to keep people moving. How many times does a company need to have their drivers taken out a bridge or an overpass before that becomes a problem? And also the impacts that one or two bad actors have on the entire industry. The whole industry is full of, they're professionals. That's their job. They're professional drivers. They have professionals on their teams to make sure that things are safe. And I would hope, and I would assume that the rest of the industry who is playing by the rules and doing the right thing is hopeful that penalizing people that are not playing by the rules, abusing their employees. I mean, if you feel like you're going to get behind an 18-wheeler and not feel safe, that's a problem. And so, if starting at this level of fine increases is going to get people's attention, then, I think that's a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Allie, a start, but doesn't solve the larger issues of the industry and the national problems and the loopholes and that type of thing. But it seems like it's a start.
Yeah, and I think that'll come. Let's hope that it comes. But these damages are expensive, so if they naturally needed to bring up the price. But the whole thing I keep thinking about today is there's this character from Parks and Rec that he's like, you jaywalk, straight to jail. Do this, straight to jail. And it's because now they're also saying that you could get jail time from this too. And the entire time everybody was talking, I was like, hit an overpass, straight to jail. Bully on social media, straight to jail. And
that makes sense to me.
Right.
This is awesome.
But the reason why you should care, let me point that out. And Carly mentioned a lot about that. The reason you should care is because, this impacts us as drivers. And so this was news week after week after week, overpass after overpass. And so I think people wanted a little bit of a solution to this. It's so random, but people were following the story. And so now we have some action on it. But this is really expensive. So jack it up even more.
Yeah, your roads not only do your roads get taken away, which if you're a commuter or you're a business is really important. Every penny you got to spend fixing the busted up overpass is money that's not going to healthcare. It's not going to housing. It's not going to all of those to the toxic drug crisis. It's going to fix preventable accidents that if people just took a little bit of care could be avoided. And so I think you're absolutely right, Ali. Like it costs a lot, and it was about time. There is the Mack truck loophole. We've got to get federal legislation, or else all these companies are just going to say, "Oh, it's my Nunavut subsidiary that's operating the trucks here," and they'll be able to continue to do that until we see the action from Ottawa. But hopefully, that's on the horizon.
Straight to jail.
Straight to jail. Well done.
Switching gears to the forestry sector, and I attended what's actually kind of a rare gathering this week from 3 competitive unions, the Steelworkers Unifor and the former Pulp and Paper Workers Union. They get together, Victoria, they release a report on the forestry sector. There's been more than 13 mill closures the past year, 9,000 jobs lost the past 5 years. They get the premier in the room, and some very frustrated forestry workers start throwing questions at him. And he does a pretty good job, I thought, answering them and agreeing to the report's recommendations. He even says he's stung a little bit to know that the workers in the forestry sector don't really understand government's forestry plan, which I thought was kind of an interesting observation on that, Ali. This sector coming together, and you know, the union workers in the forestry sector used to be like lockstep, foundational New Democrat allies, building blocks and ridings to encourage the premier to do more and kind of pepper him with questions. That dynamic I found quite interesting.
It was interesting. One, I think he needs to do this more. I think this opened up the door for him to do this.
To be fair, I think
regularly.
he does do it quite a bit, but his office doesn't tell anybody and no one ever goes to them. So that's a whole nother show that I'll just leave for you. But carry on.
Start telling people. The bottom line is I think a lot of these people are just worried about their jobs, right? And so if they don't understand, it's because we're not doing a good job from the provincial level of saying, okay, this is how this impacts your job. You will have a job a year from now. And their uncertainty sitting in the seat of, I may not have a job a week from now. So good for him for doing it, and just start telling people about it. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm. The linkage, like you would hear these workers say, there's not enough fiber, there's not enough wood or wood products, even wood waste to keep my job and keep my company going. And then Eby's talking about finding security for fiber in the midterm by cutting all of these planning agreements with First Nations. And that, you know, like there is a path between the two, right? The security of once you know where you can log and the fiber. But in the meantime, the sector's just getting hammered with closures and losses. And so trying to link those two things together and explain them seems to be the challenge of the government. Yeah,
it's a tough time for forestry. The industry can thrive only as much as there's an annual allowable a cut, and it's shrinking because of climate change, because of wildfires, because of pine beetle. You can't log or add value to wood that's been incinerated in wildfires, and it's causing hurt in communities. There are job losses. There are harm to local economies. I agree with Ali. The NDP needs to do more to listen to those voices of my kind of New Democrats, people who work in the mines and the mills, and resource work is about a good pay and a roof over your head and a hospital and school in your community and a better future for your kids. On policy, I think it's inevitable that we're going to see some of the big corporate giants, the Canfors and the Paper Excellences and Western Forest Products, give way to more local independent producers who can operate and deliver more local benefits with lower overhead. And I see First Nations playing a foundational role in that on the business side. On politics, it's interesting, these events. Remember when David Eby was about to become the premier and everyone said he was going to be premier egghead Mick out of touch? The pointy technocrat who'd falter after the departure of the smooth and likable John Horgan. Well, What we're seeing from him is someone who's got a lot of empathy, who's very good at connecting with people, very good at reading a room, acknowledging what they're feeling, identifying where the government needs to do better and being okay with admitting that and saying that, and then getting on with doing the work. And so, I think that's going to, make him a more formidable campaigner come election time than the opposition parties might have thought he'd be a year and a half ago.
Yeah, he is able to use that, in your term, egg-headedness to his advantage, though, because like he had read this forestry report in detail more than people in the room at one point. There's a guy who was questioning him who hadn't even read the report. He kept referring back to it and drawing subpoints out and making linkages, and like just the act of reading a group's report and agreeing with it and then speaking to them about it is not something all politicians can or are willing to do. So that was Carly. What do you make of this larger kind of forestry issue for the NDP?
I come from a resource community. So anytime that government is talking about the people behind the resources and the resource development, and I'm not talking about the people around the board table, I'm talking about the people in the coveralls with the boots on, getting the work done and bringing that money back into the economy. I'm happy about it in whatever capacity. I think we've seen a lot from this government historically that, of course we've got climate change. Of course we've got the reality of the ability to, produce this product given our current circumstances. Like Jeff said, you can't create forestry products out of burnt wood. I understand that. But at the end of the day, there are people that do these jobs. There are people whose entire lives are tied up in this industry for generations. It's not just a family that lives in Prince George. It's that person's parents and that person's parents. So, I think the reality of the resource, how we move forward in resource development in this province, to bring it down to the people level and to actually feel the emotion and see the impacts of the reality is really important. And I think any opportunity to talk about that and to hear those stories is great. I just hope this extends beyond just forestry, because there are more resource industries in this province that need that government support for the people and for the jobs. We have a huge deficit. People seem to be fine with that, but somebody's got to pay for it. And I don't know how much more of it can just be us as individuals working our corporate jobs. I think the reality is that a lot of that revenue and a lot of that potential comes from BC's resources. So forestry, yes. LNG, yes. All of the other bits and pieces that come together in this ecosystem of the energy mix to create who we are as a province, yes. The people behind that at the top of that. So,
yeah, good points. Thank you to the panel for being here. Thank you for watching and listening to the show. Make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast for some additional content. This week, we're going on a couple-week break, actually, because of Good Friday and some spring break activities, but we'll be back with all the latest in BC politics here on Political Capital. Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn more at uber.com/flexibilityworks.